Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. And so we had some special elections yesterday. Florida went as expected. The Republicans won, not by as much as Trump won in the election, um, by double digits in the other direction. And that's, a loss is still a loss. Like, it doesn't matter. It's still a fucking Republican that's in the House. So, um, in some ways, I don't really care. The one thing that it does do is show voters that there are other people. There is a possibility. So don't give up. When you're in a district or an area that is so deeply entrenched with one party or the other, it's really difficult if you're the other party um, to feel like your vote's going to matter. A Republican in Manhattan or a Democrat in, Mississippi or Northern Florida, that's tough to feel like something matters. Um, but uh, it does give a glimmer of hope that, hey, there are people that will see things my way as well. So maybe it's worth getting out there and casting a vote, because that's to me that's the biggest deterrent for people voting, is feeling that it doesn't matter. The Electoral College does that a lot. There's really no point if you're in New York or California, if you're a Republican, um, unless you really think your area can elect someone to that house, if you think that matters. So it doesn't change anything in Congress. I don't really think it's um, a huge bellwether. Our districts are so gerrymandered as it is. It's really tough to think that there's going to be any kind of tidal wave in any direction. Um, so that's that. Wisconsin was a delightful outcome that the Democrat candidate for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court won over the candidate that was backed by Trump, or endorsed by Trump and backed by millions of Elon Musk's money. Um, so it's nice to see that voters had a backbone and somehow that wasn't rigged. Maybe they just didn't think that was an important enough election to rig, because I do feel like that's something that we're going to have to be paying attention to and dealing with, as long as those idiots are at the helm. Um, and so that's good news for Wisconsin. I just don't think that that's a huge bellwether to anything. We've got a long way to go between now and any other election that's of any import nationally. So we'll see um, what happens between now and then, and how much our our votes are going to be able to count. There's a bill that's going to get voted on called the SAFE Act, which says that you have to prove you're a U.S. citizen with either a birth certificate or a passport, and that the name on your birth certificate or passport has to match the name on the voter rolls, which means anybody who's changed their name, i.e., most married women, will not have a birth certificate that matches their current legal name. So if you've changed your name and you don't have a passport, you don't get to vote. And uh, that's a that's a lot of people. Um, so there needs to be some pressure against that bill in Congress. But uh, the thing that did happen in Congress yesterday was Cory Booker standing up for over 25 hours to rail against this administration. And I have to echo what Sonny Hostin said today on The View about the thing that's important about this wasn't a filibuster because there was no bill on the floor. Um, but it was, and it wasn't just, I'm going to take up time. It was, here's all the things that are wrong. And this is what we should be doing. And I didn't watch the whole thing. I've seen snippets of it, but I did watch the last 90 minutes. Um, and he told stories about John Lewis that I didn't realize he had such a personal connection to, and those were made me weepy. Um, he was very emotional by the end of it. Um, but he did talk a lot about we're meeting a moral moment, that it's not left and it's not right. Excuse me. And he talked about Signalgate and national security, and why aren't we having investigations again with those people? Why isn't the Senate doing its job? Why hasn't Elon Musk been brought in to talk about Doge and what they're doing? Why haven't the senators in that body done their job? And I thought that was really important, that he was putting that into record, and doing it in that body in front of those people. Um, because there were Republican senators there. I mean, obviously everyone didn't stay the whole time. Chris Murphy stayed with him the whole time, and apparently his cousin Pam. um, but it was substantive, and he read letters from veterans and citizens and people from Democrats, independents, Republicans. Like he wanted to make sure that people's voices were getting heard, that they were detailing what the fuck is wrong in the first, whatever it is, 70 under 75 days of this presidency, um, and how that body needs to be doing more to protect the American people. And so that was nice to see. It's finally, I think I said this yesterday, like the first of the establishment corporate Democrats are actually getting up and and showing that they're in a fight. And you know, again, a little fuck you to Sarah Haynes, who says, this is where things get done. This is where you get results. Standing up and yelling isn't going to do anything. And thank God Whoopi had the wherewithal to correct her, not to her face and not point it out directly like I'm doing, but to say that all of those protests, everything that happens in the streets and everything that happens in the town halls, those things are all important too. Because Sarah Haynes, if you aren't standing up and talking um, at your local representatives and your town halls and getting in the street and on social media and calling your representatives, if you aren't telling them how fucking angry you are that they're not doing anything, they won't do anything. It's that kind of action that gets someone like Cory Booker to say, you know what, I think there's support for this. Because they're not going to do anything in a vacuum. They're not going to do anything if they think that it's going to react or have a negative reaction on them wholeheartedly, right? They're very skittish, which is unfortunate because you need more some more bold action. And I hope that Cory Booker and the support that he received from some of his colleagues and from sort of around the world shows some of those other um, legislators that this is what we're looking for. This is what we want. Show us you're in the fight, not through platitudes and not through talking points on talk shows, but actually saying the shit that's wrong and doing something about it. Um, and I don't care if the bill doesn't ever get put to the floor or brought to a vote. Write the fucking bills against this stuff. Make them be the ones to say, we don't want to vote on whether or not a felon can be the president. We don't make them vote on whether or not we need to get money out of politics. Make them say, we don't want to do that. Anyway, so that was very exciting. um, and again, no law gets passed, nothing gets changed today. But I hope it's at least a bellwether and a signal to other politicians and to the populace that all of this stuff matters, and we shouldn't forget about it or sweep it under the rug or let it be normalized. He talked about that a lot. And why are we letting this just happen? Why are we letting this feel normal? Why aren't we calling this out every day? So, um, So that's good. That was a nice little moment for democracy while we still have it. Um, yeah. And I don't usually talk about the guests or their stuff, but I just will say one more time because I've said this many times on this channel. The Michelle Williams and Jenny Slate program, and they're talking about um, how deep and valuable friendships are. I'm going to say again, there's nothing in our culture, entertainment, music, media, otherwise, that says being by yourself is great. Good for you. It's a valid choice. You can live a complete and productive life on your own. Everything is catered to finding the person, whether it's gay or straight or whatever. It doesn't matter. Everything is about you're not complete until you've found the one, and it's such utter bullshit. Um, and I don't think even in this instance when they're talking about I found my best friend and but the woman had a husband too. Um, you don't even it doesn't you don't even need to concentrate on one other person. You can have that fulfillment of life and it comes from a series of places. Um, and figuring out how to balance that and get what you need um, to feel content and fulfilled uh, without having to succumb to all of the drama and the self doubt um, and the worry that somehow if you don't get partnered up, if you don't have the person, then you can't be fulfilled because you can. And there just isn't enough messaging in the world that says that. Um, so that's where we'll end for what's today? Again, Wednesday.